Alien girl walked beside the human after the fire. What she finally said stilled the smoke in him. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Let's return to our main character. The night still smelled of burned cedar and melted metal, the kind of smoke that clung to skin even after the fire crews had already pulled back. Evan Cole stepped over a collapsed beam, his boots brushing through thin layers of warm ash that crackled underfoot. His gloves were scorched at the fingertips, the last trace of the 18 hours he'd spent dragging strangers out of the wildfire's path. He didn't feel like a hero. He just felt empty, like the flames had taken something out of him on their way through. The breeze carried the faint ember glow of dying sparks drifting across the blackened ground, tiny orange stars falling one by one. Evan paused, steadying his breath. The gauges on his portable mask blinked amber, safe enough to be outside, but the air still tasted like a memory he wasn't ready to swallow. That was when he heard it, a soft shift of movement, light, almost cautious. Not the rustle of an animal. Something standing, watching. He swung his light toward the sound, and the beam found her. Leora, the alien girl he'd pulled from beneath a fallen support frame earlier that evening. She stood now, unsteady but upright, her skin a pale blue touched with a faint silver sheen that caught the wandering sparks. The glow made her look almost luminous against the darkness. Her eyes, wide, reflective, gentle, followed his every breath as though she was learning him by the rhythm alone. She wasn't close enough to touch, but close enough that he could hear the soft tremble in her breathing, like each inhale still stung against the lingering heat in the air. Evan cleared a bit more debris, giving her space. He didn't speak first. She didn't either. She simply walked toward him, slow, deliberate, every footstep pressing softly into the soot. When she reached his side, she didn't reach for him or lean on him, though she clearly could have used the support. Instead, she stood parallel, exactly beside him, as if matching the angle of his shoulders might steady the night around them. For a long moment, the world held only the sigh of the cooling earth and the faint crackle of a stubborn ember refusing to die. Evan adjusted the strap of his gear, trying to shrug off the weight in his chest. She watched him do it, head tilted slightly, her hair stirring in the warm breeze. She didn't ask if he was hurt. She didn't ask why he'd come back after the crews had left. She just breathed there with him, the two of them sharing the smoky air as though sharing a single, quiet truth. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, careful, like stepping barefoot onto cooled stone. You stayed, she said. No accusation. No surprise. Just something honest settling between them. Evan turned his head slightly, meeting her gaze through the drifting haze. And for the first time since the fire started, the smoke inside him didn't rise. It settled. The air had cooled just enough for the smoke to turn thin and ghost-like, drifting in slow ribbons across the charred clearing. Evan stepped over a fallen branch, brushing the lingering ash from his sleeve, the motion steady but tired. His shoulder ached where he had blocked the falling beam earlier, a dull throb that pulsed each time he moved. Leora kept pace beside him, her steps lighter, almost silent. The faint silver on her blue skin reflected the glow of distant embers, giving her an almost moonlit shimmer despite the darkness around them. She watched everything with that quiet attentiveness he had noticed the moment she first opened her eyes. She was studying the world as though it might shift under her feet at any moment. When a breeze carried a swirl of gray smoke past them, he saw her flinch and draw a slow breath through her nose, as if testing the air for something more than just safety. Does the air hurt you? Evan asked, keeping his voice low. She shook her head. No, it is just strange. It smells heavy, like memories that have not decided if they want to stay or leave. Evan nodded. He understood that more than he expected to. The devastation stretched ahead in uneven shapes, long shadows formed by melted frames and collapsed shelters. His flashlight beam moved across a half-buried panel with ethery etchings still faintly visible. Leora paused beside it, lowering herself carefully to brush the soot with the back of her hand. Her touch was gentle, almost reverent. "This was my home," she whispered. Not dramatic, not mournful, just an acknowledgement, soft as settling dust. Evan crouched beside her, giving her space without pulling away. "I am sorry," he said. It was all he could offer, simple and human. Leora traced one curve of the burned markings, her fingers trembling at the end. "My people shaped our walls with light. When we were at peace, the glow inside the stone grew warm." She waited a moment, gathering breath. "I keep expecting to feel it. Even now." The ember glow flickered across her face, catching the moisture gathering at the corner of her eye before it could fall. Evan looked at the ruin again, feeling the weight settle deeper in his chest. He did not know whether to speak or stay quiet, but she made the decision for him when she stood, slow but steady. "You found me under there," she said, gesturing toward the broken frame. "Why did you go back? You could have walked away. The fire was already ending." Evan adjusted the strap on his gear, the leather creaking softly. "Because the ending does not matter if someone is still inside it." She considered that, eyes softening, her breath fogging faintly in the cooler air. They walked on, side by side, through the low hum of cooling earth. Somewhere in the distance, a single metal beam pinged as it contracted. Leora tilted her head toward him, studying the tension in his jaw. "You breathe like someone trying not to remember," she said. He exhaled slowly, not denying it. "It has been a long day." She nodded once, understanding in a way that felt older than her voice. As they approached the edge of the burned clearing, she reached out, not to touch him, but to match her step with his again, as though keeping pace might steady something in both of them. And for a moment, the quiet between them felt like the first part of the night that did not smell like smoke. The wind shifted, carrying the last thin trails of smoke across the ground like gray threads trying to stitch the burned clearing back together. Evan slowed his pace as the terrain grew uneven, patches of unburned soil mixing with streaks of blackened ash. His boots pressed soft impressions into the damp earth, each step releasing a faint scent of cooled minerals and charred wood. Leora moved beside him with that quiet, deliberate grace that made almost no sound at all, as if the ground itself adjusted for her. The faint silver shimmer on her skin flickered whenever an ember far behind them pulsed back to life before dimming again. She looked ahead, then up at the sky, her eyes reflecting the faint glow of distant stars. "It is quieter now," she said softly. Evan adjusted the small emergency lantern hanging from his belt. "Fires die fast when the humidity comes in." She studied the cool air as though tasting it. "Do humans always talk like that? As if nature listens to you?" Evan almost smiled. "Nature does what it wants. I just follow its warnings." Leora glanced at him in a thoughtful, almost curious way. They reached the edge of the clearing where a thin stand of partially burned trees leaned inward, their bark darkened but not destroyed. Evan rested a hand against one trunk, feeling the warmth still trapped there. Leora brushed her fingertips near the same spot, not touching it directly. "Your hands do not shake anymore," she observed. Evan let out a slow breath. "They will later." She tilted her head. "From fear." "From everything," he answered. Leora let the quiet settle between them again. She moved past him and stepped onto a small ridge overlooking the valley below. The moonlight caught her hair, lifting it slightly in the breeze. Evan joined her, scanning the horizon where lines of emergency lights flickered faintly near the base stations. "They will be looking for you," she said. He shrugged one shoulder, careful of the sore one. "They will manage." She looked at him longer this time, her gaze gentle, steady. "You step toward danger the way my people step toward light." "What?" Evan thought for a moment. The valley below was a dark bowl, still cooling, still releasing faint spirals of steam into the night. "Because someone has to," he said. "And because if I do not move, the worry gets louder." Leora seemed to understand that more deeply than he expected. She lowered her eyes, letting her breath settle. "My people used to say that smoke carries the voice of the past, and wind carries the voice of the future." She paused, letting her words linger between them. "I do not know which one I am hearing right now." Evan looked at her profile outlined by the moonlight, the soft glow around her giving the night a quiet center. "Maybe both," he said. Her shoulders softened. The breeze shifted again, cooler now, washing over them. Leora stepped just a little closer, enough that their shadows touched on the ground, but not their hands. "Standing here," she said quietly, does not hurt as much when you stay. Evan let the silence breathe, the calm settling over the clearing like a long exhale. For the first time since the flames had risen, the night felt like it was beginning to rebuild itself. And he realized he was breathing easier too. The ridge sloped downward into a narrow path where the soil turned soft and dark, holding the night's coolness like a quiet promise. Evan tested the ground with the heel of his boot to make sure it would hold. Leora followed him, her steps careful but steady, the faint shimmer on her skin brightening whenever the lantern at his hip swung close. The smoke was lighter here, thin enough that the stars above appeared sharper, almost like scattered pieces of glass. Evan's breath came easier, and he noticed Leora lifting her face slightly toward the clearer sky, as if letting the cleaner air settle into her. The path curved around a cluster of trees that had survived the fire with charred bark, but branches still intact. Their leaves rustled softly in the breeze, the sound gentle compared to the crackling destruction behind them. "These trees," Leora said quietly, "they still sing." Evan listened. The leaves did make a soft murmur, almost like a whisper. "They made it," he said. "Not everything burns." She touched one of the lower branches, not bending it, just letting her fingers hover close enough to feel the warmth the tree still carried. Ethery believed that if something survived a great heat, it was meant to become something new. Her voice lowered. "I am trying to understand what that means now." Evan let the words settle between them before they continued along the path. His shoulder pulsed again, this time sharper, and he pressed his hand against the sore spot without drawing attention to it. Leora noticed anyway. "You are hurting." "It is manageable," Evan said, but she studied him with a steady, knowing gaze. "Humans always say that," she replied softly. They reached a small clearing where a rescue supply pod had been dropped earlier. Its metal casing was dented but intact, painted with reflective strips that caught the lantern light. Evan keyed the panel, and the door hissed open. Inside were thermal blankets, water containers, and a small heater unit. He grabbed one of the blankets and shook off the dust before offering it to Leora. She blinked in surprise. "Is this for me?" "It gets colder at night," he said, "especially after a fire." She accepted it slowly, running her hand across the fabric as though memorizing its texture. "Your world makes soft things," she murmured. Evan huffed a quiet breath. "Just practical things." She wrapped the blanket loosely around her shoulders, the silver blue of her skin glowing against the warm fabric. The heater hummed to life, sending a gentle wave of warmth around them. Leora sat on a nearby fallen log, the blanket draped like a mantle. Evan sat beside her, keeping a respectful space, the heat settling into his tired muscles. For a while neither of them spoke. The silence felt less like emptiness and more like settling dust, calm and slow. Finally Leora turned her head toward him. "Earlier," she said, "when you found me, I felt the heat so close. I thought it was the end." Evan looked at her, the lantern reflecting in her eyes. But it was not. She exhaled, the breath soft, steady. "Because you lifted the weight from my chest." Evan felt the words land heavier than he expected. She looked down at the blanket, smoothing the edge between her fingers. "I did not know humans carried others so gently." Evan swallowed the knot rising in his throat. "Sometimes we do. When it matters." Leora's gaze lifted and held his. "It mattered," she said, and the night, for a moment, felt warmer than any heater could make it. The heater's soft hum blended with the distant rustle of half-burned leaves, creating a calm rhythm that settled over the clearing. Evan eased his weight against the fallen log, feeling the warmth seep into his tired shoulder. Leora sat beside him, wrapped in the blanket he had given her, the fabric catching the faint glow from the lantern and turning it into a gentle halo around her. Her eyes traced the tree line as if reading something only she could see. "The forest sounds different now," she murmured. Evan listened. There were no crackles, no falling branches, only the low whisper of wind moving through the surviving leaves. "It is quieter," he said. "But quiet is not always bad." Leora shifted the blanket slightly. "On my world, calm comes after the light fades. We wait for it. We sit with it." She looked at him, considering something. "Do humans wait for calm too?" Evan took a slow breath. "Sometimes. Sometimes we chase it." She absorbed that answer with a thoughtful tilt of her head. The lantern flickered as a breeze passed, and she followed the movement of its shadow across the ground. Your light behaves like ours, she said softly. It trembles when it is unsure. Evan glanced at the lantern. Or maybe it is just tired. Her lips curved gently, almost a smile. The kind that asked nothing, only reflected understanding back at him. He adjusted his position, careful not to disturb her space. But she shifted closer, just enough that their shoulders were separated by the width of a breath. The warmth from the heater brushed across both of them. Leora looked down at her hands. Earlier, when you placed the blanket over me, I felt steady. Not because the blanket was warm. It was the way you did it. Evan swallowed, unsure how to receive that. Anyone would have helped. She lifted her eyes. They held steady, clear, almost luminous. But you did. Silence settled again, softer this time, less like ash falling and more like the quiet after a long-held breath. The night around them seemed to lean in, listening. A faint sound broke the stillness, the ping of cooling metal far away, followed by the gentle sigh of the wind. Leora looked toward it, then back at him. My people believe that after great heat, the spirit changes shape. It becomes clearer. It sees what it did not see before. Evan rubbed the tension in his shoulder. Do you feel changed? She considered the question carefully. I feel awake. More than I expected to be tonight. Her gaze lingered on him, soft but present. And you? Do you feel changed, Evan? He let the question rest in the air. He thought about the fire, the long hours, the weight he carried in his chest, the way it had felt like smoke inside him. Now, sitting beside her, that heaviness felt different, less sharp, less consuming. Maybe, he said quietly. Maybe a little. Leora drew the blanket closer around herself. Then perhaps we survived more than flames. The breeze moved through the clearing again, gentle, cool, carrying no smoke this time. Evan watched it lift a strand of her silver-lit hair. For a moment, it felt like the night itself was learning how to breathe again. And he realized he was too. The heater's soft glow dimmed slightly as the fuel cell adjusted, casting a warmer, lower light across the clearing. Evan shifted his weight, rolling his sore shoulder carefully to ease the tension that had settled into it. Leora watched the motion with a quiet focus, her expression thoughtful, her hands still wrapped gently around the blanket. The silver shimmer along her skin picked up every flicker of lantern light, creating the illusion that the night itself was reflecting through her. Your energy is fading, she said softly. Evan exhaled, the breath steady but heavy. It has been a long night. Long for your body, she added, and longer for your spirit. He glanced at her, surprised by the accuracy of her words. She did not look away. Humans carry invisible weight. I can feel it when you breathe. Evan rubbed his chest without thinking. I guess you are not wrong. Leora shifted closer, not touching him, just closing the space between them to where the warmth of the heater reached both of them equally. The night around them had grown still, the air cooler but clean, carrying only the faint scent of damp soil and leaves rather than smoke. My people believe that emotion is a light, she said. When it dims, the body hurts. When it brightens, the body steadies. Evan let his gaze settle on the soft glow of the heater. Humans do not talk about emotion like that. Humans hide it, she replied, even when it shapes every part of them. He let that thought linger in the air. The quiet between them felt deeper now, more settled, as if the forest itself was listening. Leora traced the edge of the blanket with her fingertips, the movement slow and reflective. Earlier, she said, you said the ending does not matter if someone is still inside it. She paused, then lifted her eyes to his. Were you speaking about me or yourself? Evan opened his mouth, then hesitated. He had meant it about her, but as the words replayed in his mind, he realized they had come from something inside himself too, something he did not often look at. Maybe both, he admitted. She absorbed that with a gentle stillness. Your people run toward flames. My people run toward light. Perhaps that is why we crossed paths tonight. A faint hum rose from the heater, and the lantern cast a ripple of gold across the ground. Leora turned her eyes toward the unburned ridge beyond the clearing. Your world feels wide, she said. Wide and loud and bright. But you walk through it as if it is dim. Evan looked down at his hands, catching bits of soot still settled in the creases. Sometimes life gets heavy. Then why carry it alone? She asked. Her voice was not sharp, not demanding. It was curious, almost gentle, like someone trying to learn the shape of a truth. Evan thought about the question. Really thought about it. Because I am used to it, he said quietly. And because letting someone else help feels complicated. Leora nodded slowly. Ethery do not carry weight alone. Light is shared. That is how it grows. She turned toward him again, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lantern like tiny, steady stars. You do not have to share the whole weight. Just a piece. The offer hung in the air, simple, unspoken, real. Evan nodded once, a slow, intentional motion. The heaviness in his chest eased, just enough to feel the difference. Leora's voice dropped to a near whisper. Then let me share the quiet with you. And in the stillness that followed, the night felt clearer, as if something finally understood how to stay. The heater gave a soft click as it cycled, its glow dipping before rising again, steady and warm against the cool night air. Evan rubbed his palms together, not from cold, but to stay awake. Fatigue pressed at his eyelids, that deep, slow kind that settled after too many hours of adrenaline. Leora sensed it. She always seemed to notice the small things first, the quiet things. Your body is asking you to rest, she said gently. Evan breathed out through his nose. Maybe, but we should move soon. The base station will send a retrieval team. Leora's expression shifted, concerned rather than alarmed. Will they understand that I am not a threat? He paused, hearing the underlying question. They will listen to me, he said. I will make sure of it. She studied him, as if weighing the truth of his words. You protect quickly, she murmured. It is part of who you are. Evan shifted his shoulder, the tenderness reminding him of the beam he had pushed away earlier. I just try to do the right thing. And if the right thing is difficult? She asked. He answered with a quiet honesty. Then I do it anyway. Her gaze softened at that, the silver sheen along her cheek catching a sliver of lantern light. The breeze rustled the leaves above them, bringing with it a faint, unexpected chill. Evan stood and scanned the tree line. A subtle vibration pressed through the ground, barely noticeable but present, like a distant engine hum traveling through the soil. Leora's eyes widened slightly. She stood as well, adjusting the blanket but keeping it around her shoulders. Something is coming, she whispered. Evan listened harder. He heard it too, a low, rhythmic sound, not threatening, but unusual in the quiet. Then, just as quickly as it came, the vibration faded into stillness. Probably equipment cooling out there, Evan said, though he was not certain. This whole sector is full of machines under the surface. Leora looked unsettled, not afraid but alert, as though something about the shift in the wind had touched a memory. Evan stepped a little closer, careful not to crowd her. You are safe, he said. I am not going anywhere. She drew in a slow breath, grounding herself. My people felt changes in light, in air, in heat. The fire earlier, it left echoes. Evan nodded. Trauma does that to humans too. Sometimes the body remembers before the mind does. Leora placed a hand lightly against her chest, as if feeling for a pulse. I did not expect the memory to follow me. Not after the flames dimmed. Memories do that, Evan said. They do not ask permission. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting something tender, something searching. Then how do you walk with them? He hesitated, then spoke with the kind of honesty that only came in the dark. One step at a time, and not always alone. The words lingered in the cool air. Leora's shoulders relaxed a little, and she closed her eyes briefly, letting the breeze move across her face. The faint silver glow along her skin brightened as she opened them again. Something had settled in her expression, not calm exactly, but a kind of decision. Evan, she said softly, if we must walk into whatever comes next, I choose to walk beside you. The heater hummed faintly. The night breathed, and in that small clearing, her words steadied something deep inside him, something he had not realized was shaking. The night held a different kind of stillness now, the kind that settled after a choice had been spoken aloud. Evan felt it lingering in the cool air, quiet and steady, as Leora's words echoed softly in his mind. She stood close enough that the warmth from the heater touched both of them, the blanket draped over her shoulders like a gentle shield. Her eyes reflected the lantern's low glow, silver blue and steady, waiting for something more honest than reassurance. Evan opened his mouth to reply, but the faint vibration he had felt earlier returned, a subtle tremor under the soil. Not harsh, not loud, just present, like a note held too long in the back of a song. Leora's head lifted slightly. There, she whispered. Do you feel it? He nodded. Yeah. It is almost like a pulse. The tremor faded again, leaving the forest in silence. Evan scanned the tree line. No lights. No movement. Just the faint glow of stars through the branches. Leora pulled the blanket a little tighter around her shoulders. This pattern. I know it, she murmured. It is the rhythm of an ethery beacon. Evan turned to her. A beacon? For what? She searched the air, as if listening to something he could not hear. For survivors. It calls to those who remain. The meaning of her words settled slowly between them. He stood straighter. You think someone else made it out? Leora did not answer at first. Her eyes deepened with recognition, memory rising like light behind them. No, she said at last, her voice quiet but certain. This beacon, it was my duty. Before the fire reached my home, I was the one who kept the forest signals alive. I should have sent this pattern. She pressed her hand lightly to her chest, not in pain, but in realization. This is my own echo. Evan felt the truth of it settle around them like a soft shift in the wind. You mean the forest is repeating your signal? She nodded, her expression tightening with something he could only describe as bittersweet recognition. Ethery structures are shaped to remember the one who cared for them. When they sense the keeper has not returned, they repeat her call for as long as they have strength. Evan tried to imagine it, a network built from memory, calling out for the one who kept it alive. So this beacon, it is calling for you? Leora inhaled slowly. Yes, but it should not be. It means it still believes I am lost. Her voice trembled just slightly, the way a light flickers when touched by wind. Evan stepped closer, slow and sure, letting the lantern's glow catch her eyes. You are not lost, he said. You are right here. She held his gaze, and something in her quieted, settling like ash returning to earth. The tremor pulsed again, faint but distinct. Leora's breath caught. It will keep calling until I answer. Evan nodded. Then we will answer. She looked at him with a mixture of wonder and disbelief, her silver blue eyes brightening at the edges. You would walk toward a signal that is not meant for your kind. Evan's answer was simple. I walk where people need me. Her expression softened, almost glowing. Then tonight, she whispered, the forest will finally know I am not alone. The breeze moved gently around them, carrying no smoke now. Only the quiet promise of something waiting in the dark, something that recognized her light and called her home. The beacon's faint rhythm pulsed once more beneath the soil, a soft tremor that barely stirred the leaves but seemed to echo directly through Leora's chest. She stood still, listening with her whole body, her silver blue eyes reflecting something between recognition and release. Evan watched her, the heater's warm glow brushing the edge of her face while the lantern cast long, quiet shadows across the ground. The night felt wider now, as if holding its breath. Leora lifted her hand slowly, palm open toward the earth, and the tremor answered. A final, gentle vibration that faded like a sigh. It knows I am awake, she said, her voice soft, almost wonderstruck. Evan stepped closer. Does that mean it will stop calling? She nodded. Yes. It only repeats the signal when the keeper is missing. Her eyes flickered toward him, full of something tender. You helped me remember who I was meant to be. Evan exhaled, the breath settling deeper than he expected. You did the hard part. You survived. Leora drew the blanket closer around herself, though not from cold. Survival is not the same as returning, she whispered. But you walked with me until I could return. The forest around them had grown incredibly still, as if every branch leaned in slightly, waiting for the final thread of the night to settle into place. The heater's glow dimmed again, its fuel cell nearing the end, and the lantern flickered in a slow, steady rhythm, almost matching Leora's breath. Evan looked out toward the ridge where the first hint of pre-dawn softening touched the edges of the sky. Morning is coming, he said. Rescue teams will be here soon. Leora followed his gaze. The faintest line of cool gray light was beginning to stretch across the horizon. She took a slow step toward him, not uncertain, just deliberate. Evan, she said, her voice barely above the whisper of the wind, when you pulled me from the ruins. I thought you carried only my body. She paused, gathering something inside herself like a fragile truth taking shape. But you carried my light back to me. The words settled gently, landing in the quiet space between them, warm as the last ember of a dying fire. Evan felt his breath catch, not sharply, but in a way that eased something deep inside him. He met her eyes, and in the dim glow of lantern and sky, they looked softer than before, as if her fear had finally stepped back to let her spirit breathe again. "You helped me too," he said. "More than you know." Leora's expression softened, and the silver along her skin glowed faintly, as though her body was answering something old and familiar. She looked toward the clearing one last time. "The fire took much," she said, "but not everything." Her eyes returned to him. It did not take this moment. The breeze shifted, lifting a few strands of her hair. And for the first time since the flames had raged, the air smelled clean, cool earth, distant leaves, and a hint of morning. Evan took a slow breath. Leora stepped beside him, close enough that their shadows merged on the ground. She whispered, almost to the wind, "The stars reflected in my eyes once meant guidance." She turned her head toward him, her voice a quiet confession. "Tonight, they reflected you." And in that soft, fragile silence, the smoke inside him finally stilled.